All right. So are you ready to like ditch those boring textbooks and actually start speaking English?
Hmm.
Awesome.
Huh.
We've got a deep dive here for you, packed with techniques that go way beyond the basics.
It's really fascinating, how conversation is where language comes alive.
It is.
Yeah, it's not just about memorizing grammar rules.
Right.
It's about, real-time interaction, understanding those subtle nuances, those little things, and expressing yourself in a way that truly resonates.
Yeah, we're not aiming for like textbook perfection here.
No.
We're talking about, building the confidence and skills to have engaging, like meaningful conversations in English.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is the more you have those conversations, the more natural, intuitive the language
Yeah, I
becomes.
love that.
It's like learning to dance.
Oh,
At first, you're focusing on the steps,
yeah.
but eventually you start to feel the rhythm and you just move with ease.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you're ready to jump into practicing conversations. What are some of the most effective ways to actually go about it?
Well, research has shown that one incredibly effective approach is finding yourself a dedicated conversation partner.
Oh, like a language exchange buddy or a tutor?
Precisely. Yeah, it could be someone you connect with online, through one of those language exchange apps,
Yeah.
or even a friend who's also learning English.
Oh, nice.
The key is just having someone who can give you that consistent practice and some gentle feedback along the way.
I see. That makes sense. I imagine having that regular interaction helps you stay motivated and accountable too.
Absolutely, yeah. It also creates a safe space for you to experiment, make mistakes, get constructive feedback
Right.
without feeling self-conscious.
Yeah, that's great.
Think of it like having a personal trainer, but for your English conversation skills.
I'm already feeling more motivated to find a partner. But what about those times when you're on your own? Are there ways to practice speaking even when you don't have someone to chat with?
There are actually some surprisingly effective solo techniques you can use.
Really?
One, that might sound a little unusual at first, is talking to yourself in English.
Wait, really? Like as in just having full-blown conversations with myself?
Not necessarily full conversations, but more like thinking aloud in English,
Okay.
you know? For example, you could describe your daily activities.
Right.
Practice giving presentations, but to an imaginary audience.
Oh, wow.
You could even have like internal debates with yourself, all in English, of course.
So instead of thinking like, I need to do laundry today, I'd say it out loud in English.
Exactly.
Huh. Does that really make a difference?
It does. It might sound silly,
Yeah,
but you're essentially training your brain to think in English
I see.
and getting comfortable with the sounds and rhythms of the language.
Yeah.
It also helps you identify any vocabulary gaps
Right.
or pronunciation issues that you might have.
That's fascinating. It's like you're turning those everyday moments into mini language learning opportunities.
Exactly. And it's something you can do anytime, anywhere. You don't need any special equipment or resources.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to try that. Okay, so we've talked about finding a partner and talking to ourselves. What other tools can we add to our conversational arsenal?
Well, technology can be a real game changer
Yeah,
when it comes to language learning.
I'm all about leveraging tech. What kind of apps or tools are we talking about here?
Well, there are some incredible apps that are specifically designed for conversation practice.
Okay.
For example, there's Hello Talk and Tandem.
Oh, I've heard of those.
Yeah, these connect you with native speakers
Cool.
or language exchange. You can text, voice chat, or even video call.
Wow.
It's like having a pen pal, but one that helps you practice your English.
I love how these apps make learning feel more interactive and social.
They really do. And don't underestimate the power of speech-to-text apps
Oh, okay.
for pronunciation practice. You speak into the app and it transcribes what you're saying.
That's cool.
It's a great way to identify any sounds you're struggling with and work on improving your clarity.
I can see how that would be super helpful for pinpointing those specific pronunciation challenges. What about podcasts and audio lessons?
Oh, absolutely. Those are fantastic for immersing yourself in the natural flow of English. Picking up on those idioms and colloquialisms
Yeah.
and really training your ear to understand all those different accents.
Yeah, it's like you're absorbing the language by osmosis,
Exactly.
just by listening to native speakers in a variety of contexts.
Precisely. And the beauty of podcasts and audio lessons is that you can listen to them while you're doing other things.
Right, multitasking.
Exactly. Commuting, cooking, exercising.
Yeah.
It's a way to passively absorb the language even when you're busy with other things.
So we've got partners, solo practice, and tech. What about good old-fashioned in-person interaction?
Of course, of course.
Are there ways to practice speaking with others in a more structured setting?
Absolutely. Joining an English conversation group can be a real game changer.
I've heard about those, but I've always been a little intimidated, to be honest. What are they really like?
They're really just meetups
Okay.
where people of all levels come together to practice speaking English
Oh,
in a relaxed, supportive environment. They often have facilitators who lead activities and discussions,
yeah.
which takes the pressure off of you having to come up with topics or initiate conversations.
That sounds much less intimidating than I imagined.
Good.
And I bet it's a great way to meet people who share your passion for learning English.
It is. And these groups often organize, fun social events too,
Nice.
which is a fantastic way to practice your English in a more casual, real-world setting. Think movie nights, potlucks, game nights,
I love it.
all in English.
This is making me so excited to get out there and join a group. But I know from experience that even with all the right tools and techniques, sometimes fear holds us back from actually speaking.
Oh, absolutely. You're right. Fear of making mistakes is a very common challenge
Right.
for language learners. It's true.
But here's the thing. Research shows that learners who actually embrace those mistakes, they learn faster.
Really? How so?
Well, they see errors as valuable feedback
Okay.
and use them to refine their skills. Think about it like this.
Okay.
Every mistake you make is an opportunity to learn and grow.
I love that. It's like turning those oops moments into stepping stones.
Exactly. And remember, most native English speakers are incredibly patient and understanding.
Yeah.
They appreciate the effort you're making
Yeah.
and are more than happy to help you along the way.
That's so reassuring to hear. Okay, so we've tackled the fear factor. What about the frustration of not knowing every single word in the dictionary?
Right.
That can be a real confidence killer.
It's true, vocabulary gaps can be challenging.
Yeah.
But here's a little secret.
Okay.
You don't need to know every single word
What?
to have a successful conversation.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I feel like I'm constantly hitting a wall when I'm trying to express myself. I understand that feeling. But remember, the goal of conversation is to communicate,
Right.
not to show off your vocabulary.
Right.
Instead of getting stuck on finding that perfect word, try using, simpler words, synonyms, even gestures
Okay.
to get your point across.
So it's like finding creative workarounds.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of paraphrasing.
Right.
If you can't think of the exact word, try describing it in a different way.
So like instead of saying exhausted,
Mm.
I could say really tired or I have no energy left.
Perfect. Exactly.
Okay.
It's all about being resourceful and finding ways to express yourself, even with a limited vocabulary.
This is making me feel so much better. It's like you're taking the pressure off
Good.
and just focusing on the joy of communication.
That's the spirit. And remember, every conversation is an opportunity to learn new words.
Oh, that's true.
Keep a vocabulary journal handy.
Okay.
Jot down any unfamiliar words that you encounter.
That's a great tip. It's like you're tuning every conversation into a mini vocabulary lesson.
Precisely. And the more you expose yourself to the language, the more your vocabulary will naturally expand over time.
Awesome. Okay, so we've addressed fear of mistakes and vocabulary gaps. Is there anything else that tends to trip people up when it comes to actually speaking English?
Pronunciation
Yeah,
can be a tricky area
right.
for many learners.
It's true.
Especially, English has so many irregular pronunciations
It does, yeah.
and regional accents.
Oh, tell me about it. Sometimes it feels like the rules change every other word.
It does take time and practice
Yeah.
to master English pronunciation, but even small improvements
Yeah,
can make a big difference in
absolutely.
being understood
For sure.
and feeling confident.
Okay, so where do we even begin? Any tips for taming this pronunciation beast?
One of the best ways to improve is by utilizing a technique called shadowing.
Okay.
You listen to native speakers. This could be through podcasts, audiobooks, even movies,
Right.
and try to mimic their pronunciation
Oh, wow.
and intonation in real time.
So you're doing it like as you're listening.
Yeah, it's like a vocal workout for your English.
Oh, that sounds intense, but effective.
It can be challenging at first, but it really helps train your ear to recognize the subtle nuances of English pronunciation.
I see.
And it gets your mouth muscles
Yeah,
used to forming those correct sounds.
I can see how that would be helpful for developing a more natural and fluent sounding accent.
Yeah.
What about those particularly tricky sounds that just seem impossible to get right?
Don't worry, there are tools to help with that as well.
Oh, good.
Lots of apps and websites offer pronunciation guides
Okay,
with visual representations of how to form those sounds
I see.
and recordings of native speakers pronouncing individual words.
Cool.
You can even record yourself and compare your pronunciation to the model.
That's so handy. It's like having a virtual pronunciation coach right in your pocket.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of just slowing down your speech when you're speaking English.
Wait, really? Isn't the goal to speak, like, faster and more fluently?
Fluency is definitely important,
Yeah.
but clarity is equally important.
That's true.
When you slow down, you give yourself more time to focus on pronouncing each sound correctly.
Right.
And it allows your listener to understand you better, especially if they're not a native English speaker themselves.
That's a great point. I guess sometimes I get so caught up in trying to sound fast
Yeah.
that I end up sacrificing clarity.
It's a common tendency.
Yeah.
But remember, it's better to speak slowly and clearly
Right.
than to speak quickly and be misunderstood.
Absolutely.
And as you become more comfortable with the sounds and rhythms of English, your speed will naturally increase.
Okay, I'm totally on board with the slow and steady wins the race approach to pronunciation. What about things like intonation and rhythm?
Yes.
Those seem like they play a big role in sounding natural.
You're absolutely right. Intonation, that's the rise and fall of your voice.
Yeah.
And rhythm, the timing and pacing of your speech.
Right.
Those are essential for conveying meaning and emotion in English.
So it's not just about pronouncing the words correctly, but also about delivering them in a way that sounds natural and engaging.
Precisely. One way to practice intonation and rhythm is by listening to podcasts or audiobooks.
Okay.
Pay close attention to how the speakers use their voices
Yeah.
to emphasize certain words or phrases.
Right.
You can even try recording yourself reading a passage aloud
Okay.
and then listening back to see if your intonation and rhythm sound natural.
That's a great idea. It's like turning yourself into your own pronunciation coach.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the more you'll start to internalize the natural intonation and rhythm of English.
This is all fantastic advice. I'm
Mm.
feeling so much more confident about tackling the pronunciation challenge.
That's great to hear.
Thank you.
And remember, the most important thing is to be patient with yourself and celebrate those moments of progress.
Absolutely.
Every little step you take towards improving your pronunciation
Yeah.
brings you closer to your goal of speaking English
Yeah.
with confidence and clarity.
This has been so insightful. It feels like we've already unpacked a ton of practical techniques and strategies. But before we move on, I'm curious to hear from you, dear listener. What are some of the biggest pronunciation hurdles you've faced? And what techniques have you found helpful for overcoming them?
We'd love to hear your experiences and insights. That's great. Yeah. It's amazing to hear how all the different listeners are tackling pronunciation. It really highlights how, each language learning journey is so unique.
It does. And speaking of journeys, I think it's time we shift gears a bit and explore how to actually navigate, real-life conversations in English.
Okay.
After all, what's the point of, mastering pronunciation
Right.
if you don't have the confidence to actually use it in everyday situations?
You're absolutely right. It's like having, a beautifully crafted car, but being afraid to actually drive it.
Right, exactly.
So let's take this deep dive on the road, shall we?
Let's hit the gas. I know a lot of learners, myself included, kind of feel anxious about those, everyday scenarios where you have to, think on your feet
Yeah.
and speak spontaneously.
It's completely understandable.
Yes.
It's like being thrown onto a dance floor without knowing the steps.
Right.
But the good news is, even these seemingly complex conversations, they often boil down to just a few key phrases and strategies.
Oh, okay. So it's like having a set of go-to moves that you can then adapt to different situations.
Exactly. And the more you practice those moves, the more confident and natural you'll become.
Awesome. Okay, I'm ready to learn some moves. Let's start with a scenario that I know often makes me a little nervous. Ordering food at a restaurant.
Okay.
What are some phrases that can help me navigate that smoothly?
Well, first of all, remember that most servers are incredibly patient and helpful, especially if they can see that you're making an effort to speak English.
That's reassuring to hear. But still, I always get a bit flustered when the server comes to take my order.
I get it. So let's break it down into some manageable steps.
Okay.
First, you'll likely be greeted and asked about your table.
Right.
A simple "table for two, please" will do.
Okay, that's easy enough.
Yeah.
Then comes the menu, And sometimes I get overwhelmed by all the choices.
Sure, take your time. If you need a little extra time to decide, you can always say, we're still looking, or can we have a few more minutes?
That's helpful. I often feel pressured to decide right away.
I know. And when you're ready, you can just point to the item on the menu
Okay.
and say, I'll have this, please, or I'd like the dish name.
Simple and straightforward.
Yeah.
I like it. What if I have a question about a dish, though?
Sure.
Like if it's spicy or contains certain ingredients.
Yeah.
I always hesitate to ask.
Don't hold back on those questions.
Okay.
Clarity is key, especially when it comes to, food allergies or dietary preferences.
Right, of course.
You can say, excuse me, is this dish spicy?
Okay.
Or could you tell me what this dish contains?
So it's better to ask and be sure than to end up with a dish I can't eat.
Absolutely. Servers are there to help you enjoy your meal, and they really appreciate that clear communication.
Okay, so we've tackled the ordering part.
Mm.
What about if I need something during the meal, like more water or the bill?
You can simply make eye contact with your server
Okay.
and say, excuse me, to get their attention.
Right.
And then you can just follow up with, could we have some more water, please?
Okay.
Or could we get the check, please?
Perfect. I'm feeling much more equipped to handle a restaurant situation now.
Excellent. Remember, practice makes perfect, so try to, use these phrases whenever you get the chance.
Will do. Okay, let's move on to another scenario that I know can be a bit tricky, asking for directions.
Okay.
I always get flustered when I'm lost in a new place.
Oh, I know the feeling. Getting lost is part of the adventure, though.
Yeah, that's true.
And asking for directions, that's a great opportunity to practice your English in a real-world situation.
Right. But what's the best way to, approach someone without, sounding awkward or getting tongue-tied?
First, make eye contact and smile.
Okay.
Then you can say something like, excuse me, could you help me?
Yeah.
Or, sorry to bother you, but I'm a bit lost.
Okay, that's a good start. And then how do I actually ask for directions to a specific place?
You can say, I'm trying to get to place name. Do you know how to get there?
Okay.
Or, could you tell me how to get to place name, please?
Simple and clear, I like it. But what if I don't understand the directions they give me?
Don't be afraid to ask for clarification.
Okay.
You can say, could you repeat that, please? Or,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Would you mind speaking a bit slower?
And if the directions are, kind of complicated, would it be rude to ask them to write it down?
Not at all. You can simply say, would you mind writing that down for me, please? I want to make sure I don't get lost again.
These are such helpful tips. I'm feeling much more confident about navigating my way around now.
That's great to hear. Remember, most people are happy to help
Yeah.
if you ask politely.
Right.
And don't worry about making mistakes. It's all part of the learning process.
Okay, I'm ready to tackle one more scenario before we wrap up this part of our deep dive. Making small talk.
Okay.
It always feels, I don't know, a bit forced and awkward to me, especially, with native speakers.
I understand. Small talk can definitely feel like navigating a minefield of social cues.
It's true.
But it is an essential skill for, building rapport, creating connections, and it can even open doors to, deeper conversations.
I see that. So how do we, become more comfortable with those initial interactions, especially, when we're still kind of working on our fluency?
One of the best ways to kind of ease into small talk is by commenting on something that you share with the other person. Oh, okay.
This could be the weather, a shared interest, or even just something that's happening, in your immediate environment.
Like, this weather is beautiful, isn't it?
Exactly.
Or, I love the music they're playing.
Exactly. It's a very simple way to break the ice and show that you're open to conversation.
Okay, that makes sense. But then what? How do you keep the conversation flowing from there?
Open-ended questions are your best friend.
Okay.
Instead of asking questions that can be answered with a simple yes or no,
Right.
try asking questions that invite the other person to elaborate a bit more.
Like, what are your plans for the weekend?
Sure,
Or what kind of music do you enjoy listening to?
Exactly. These types of questions encourage the other person to share more about themselves,
Yeah.
which keeps the conversation, engaging and interesting.
And it gives you a chance to actually listen
Yes.
and learn more about the other person.
Yes.
Which can lead to, more meaningful connections.
You got it. And don't be afraid to share a little bit about yourself as well. But reciprocity is key to building that rapport.
Yeah. So if someone asked me about my weekend, I could tell them about, I don't know, a movie I saw or a book I'm reading. Even if, I don't use super complex vocabulary or grammar.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The goal is to connect, not to impress.
I love that.
And remember, Even native speakers, we appreciate genuine engagement
Right.
and a willingness to share.
This is making small talk seem much less intimidating.
Yeah.
It's more about, authentic connection than perfect grammar.
That's the perfect takeaway.
Awesome.
And remember, even if there are a few awkward silences, don't panic.
Yeah,
It happens. It's normal.
it's true.
And you can always redirect the conversation
Right.
or just politely excuse yourself if needed.
This has been so eye-opening. I'm feeling much more confident about navigating those, everyday conversational scenarios now.
That's fantastic to hear. And remember, you don't have to wait for, like, the perfect opportunity
Right.
to practice these techniques.
Every interaction, no matter how brief, is a chance to flex those conversational muscles.
You're right. It's all about building those conversational reflexes.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious to hear from our listeners.
Yes.
What are some of your go-to phrases for making small talk?
Yeah.
And what situations still make you feel a little nervous when speaking English?
We're all ears.
Yeah, it's amazing. All the different approaches there are to making small talk.
It is.
It really highlights that, like, there's no one right way to do it. It's more about finding, what feels natural
Right.
and authentic for
Yeah.
you.
Absolutely. And that idea of authenticity, that actually brings us to a key aspect of
Right?
becoming a more confident and engaging English speaker.
Right.
It's about, going beyond just the words themselves
Right.
and incorporating those subtle nuances that really make a conversation come alive.
I'm intrigued. What kind of nuances are we talking about here?
Well, think about it this way. When you're speaking your native language, you naturally use a whole range of expressions, idioms, even nonverbal cues
It's true.
to convey your meaning.
We don't even think about it. It just kind of happens automatically.
Exactly. But when you're speaking a new language, it's easy to get caught up in, the mechanics of grammar and vocabulary.
Right.
And you kind of forget about those subtle but powerful elements.
We're talking about those things that add, like, color and personality
Yeah.
and even humor to our conversations.
Exactly. And the good news is that, incorporating these nuances into your English doesn't have to be complicated.
Okay.
It's more about just becoming aware of them
Right.
and gradually, incorporating them into your everyday speech.
Okay, I'm ready to add some spice to my English.
Yeah.
Let's start with idioms. I know those can be tricky,
Yes,
but they add so much flavor to the language.
you're absolutely right. Idioms are like little windows into the culture and humor of language,
I love that.
They often can't be translated literally,
Right.
but they convey a meaning that goes beyond the individual words.
Like saying, it's raining cats and dogs, instead of just, it's raining heavily.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And using idioms can really make your English sound more natural, more expressive, and even, witty.
But with so many idioms out there, where do you even begin? It feels a bit overwhelming to me.
Don't worry, you don't need to memorize the entire dictionary of idioms.
Oh, okay, good.
Just start by paying attention to the ones that you encounter in everyday conversations.
Okay.
Movies, TV shows, even songs.
So it's about recognizing them in context.
Yes.
And then trying to, like, use them in my own conversation.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask native speakers about idioms that you don't understand.
Right.
Most people are happy to explain the meaning and give you examples of how to use them.
That's a great tip. It's like having a built-in idiom coach.
Exactly. Another way to add nuance to your English is through nonverbal communication. This includes things like body language, facial expressions, eye contact.
It's amazing how much we communicate without even saying a word.
It's true. Nonverbal cues can often speak louder than words.
Right.
And they play a huge role in how our message is received and interpreted.
So it's not just about what we say, but also how we say it
Yes,
and how we present ourselves.
exactly. For instance, making eye contact shows that you're engaged
Right.
and you're interested in the conversation.
Makes sense.
And smiling can make you seem more approachable, more friendly.
For sure.
And don't underestimate the power of gestures.
Oh, yeah.
Using your hands to emphasize a point or nodding your head to show agreement, that can add emphasis and clarity to your message.
It's like you're adding, like, an extra layer of communication to your spoken words.
Exactly. And the best part is that most of these nonverbal cues are pretty universal.
Oh, that's good.
So even if you're not fluent in English, you can still use them to enhance your communication.
This is such valuable insight. I've never really thought about how much nonverbal communication influences our conversations.
It's often something we do subconsciously, but by becoming more aware of it, we can actually use it to our advantage,
Right.
especially when speaking a new language.
Okay, so we've covered idioms and nonverbal cues. What other secrets to engaging conversation can you share?
Well, there's one more essential ingredient
Okay.
that often gets overlooked, and that's active listening.
So it's not just about, waiting for our turn to speak,
Right.
but about truly engaging with what the other person is saying.
Exactly. Active listening involves paying attention not just to the words, but also to the tone, the emotions, the nonverbal cues that the speaker is conveying.
So it's about being fully present in the conversation
Yes,
and demonstrating that you're genuinely interested in what the other person has to say.
you got it. It's about showing empathy, asking clarifying questions, and reflecting back what you've heard,
Right.
to ensure understanding.
And it also involves responding in a way that shows you're not just, hearing the words,
Right.
but actually like processing and connecting with the message.
Precisely. Active listening really makes the other person feel heard and valued,
Absolutely.
which strengthens the connection and makes the conversation more enjoyable for both parties.
It's amazing how such a simple shift in mindset
Know.
can make such a big difference
It is.
in the quality of our conversations.
It's true. And, active listening isn't just beneficial for language learning.
Right.
It's a valuable skill for all aspects of life,
That's true.
from personal relationships to professional interactions.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
Huh.
I'm feeling inspired to not just, speak English,
Good.
but to truly connect and engage with others in a more meaningful way.
That's wonderful to hear. And remember, fluency is a journey, not a destination.
It's about embracing the process,
Yeah.
celebrating those moments of progress, and never losing sight of the joy of communication.
Beautifully said. And as you continue on your English speaking journey, remember that we're here to support you every step of the way.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure diving deep into the world of English conversation with you.
The pleasure was all mine. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and are feeling inspired to, continue honing those English conversation skills.
Remember, fluency is within your reach. With dedication, practice, and a willingness to embrace, the nuances of language,
Yes.
you can unlock a world of communication and connection.
So keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep those conversations flowing.
Until next time,
Yeah.
happy conversing.